Anyway, so this is our February knowledge share. Tonight it's going to be a presentation and a discussion with Steve White, N2RWE, who is I'll call it the creator of APRS.to. A lot of you know me, Ron Startzel, KB5LNC. Today is February 11th, and yes, that is the helicopter that I fly. I flew when I was in the Marine Corps. Um, a little bit, most of you know that. So we'll just go to the next slide. Here's the basic agenda. This is the first part of it. I'll give Jeff or anybody from the foundation or the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet leadership to do any quick notes they do. Then we'll kick it over to Steve, have a Q&A, and Steve, it's up to you when you're going through, when you're doing, if you want to take questions during it, it's up to you. I'll let you run that. Once we're done with Steve and everybody who's here that really that came for the presentation, you're more than welcome to hang out for the discussion on the upcoming Appalachian Trail Golden Packet. So don't have a lot of updates, but we'll talk about that. Jeff can talk about, or anybody from the APRS Foundation, any kind of updates they want to share. Those of you who attended Hamcation, if you have anything you want to share, I think most of us know that Kenwood has called it the TMD 75 coming September or summer of 2025. So we're basically going to run with the assumption it's not going to be available for the July event this year. And then obviously we'll do Q&A on anything Appalachian Trail, Golden Packet, or APRS. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. So the question, I'll kick it over to Jeff and the leadership if you guys have anything that you want to address. So before I flip to the next slide.
Yeah, I think probably go through just the bulk of it for after the presentation, but definitely have some interesting stuff to cover for Golden Packet. I think you guys would be excited about. Well, John and I are very excited about what happened with the foundation this past weekend, and I would love to share it with you. And yeah, we'll just kind of take things from there. So, yeah, Ron, let's kick it on over whenever you're ready to our illustrious presenter.
All right. All right. So the presentation tonight's on aprs.to. And Steve, since you made it, is that, like a lot of people call aprs.fi or APRS-FI. I know most of the people in APRS call it aprs.fi. So if you have a way you'd like to have it spoken, it's up to you so we can get it from the source. But bottom line is, this is a newer website program software that takes information from the APRS IS and other sources. Steve created it. I'm going to kick it over to Steve to go into a little bit more about, his background, how he got into ham radio, APRS, and obviously if there's anything, like what got him to say, hey, we're missing something here. I want to create something new. And from what I understand, it's been around for about a year and a half or so, and has some recent updates. And Steve, whatever you want to share, I'll kick it over to you when you're ready, and you can just steal the screen.
All right, sounds good. So, first of all, nice. Thank you for the invite. I'm flattered to be able to come and talk to everybody today. I will try to not get too run on. I run a data center by living. I'm a CTO for a company that does broadcast services. So I generally give presentations to new clients and existing clients, and I tend to get a little into the weeds sometimes. So please stop me if I'm boring, and I'll try to read the body language, see if anybody's falling asleep. But anyways, glad to be here today, and it's a great group. I've been doing some research on it as well, so I might have a few questions for you guys when I'm finished here. So. First of all, one correction for you, Ron. The site has actually been online for almost 3 years now. We're just about 5 months away from 3 years. I set it up in 2022 in the summertime. It was my second attempt to get into APRS. So a little background here. I've been a ham radio operator for about 34 years, just under 34 years. I got my ticket in 92. And sometime around the mid-90s, played around with Packet. And I know a lot of you probably did at one time or another, and a little bit of APRS even back then, but it wasn't really much. If you didn't have somebody down the street or within reception range, there weren't a lot of sites, there weren't a lot of Packet bulletin boards out there. So it was a very fleeting experiment for a summer. And I kind of didn't look again at either until about 3-4 years ago when COVID hit. Like a lot of folks probably looking for something to do in the hobby while you're working from home or not working at all or sick or anything. And I got into that and started looking more and more into what I wanted to do that year. And finally, it took me until 2022 to figure out a plan for this. And I started out with an Anytone 878. I wanted to get into DMR. I wanted to try APRS, and that kind of fit the bill. I was playing around with that a little bit in the month of May of that year. And yes, the other site, I found the other site that you mentioned there. I won't say the name, but the FI site. I found it hard to use, and it is somebody that has a lot of interests, a lot of hobbies, and tries to do different things within the amateur radio hobby specifically. I really didn't want to put the effort into trying to figure out how APRS.FI worked. I just wanted to quickly diagnose whether my station was working. And like a lot of people at the time, I kind of made the same assumption that APRS.FI, well, that was APRS, even though later, very quickly, soon after, learned that it really isn't the case. So I finally was, what I really wanted was my long-term goal was to get a weather station online because I have a camp. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, actually. I wanted to get a weather station in a place where we didn't have any electricity. I wanted to be able to map. Haven't done it yet, but I wanted to start doing SOTA, and because I am a hiker, it's one of my hobbies, and I wanted to try to do summits on the air and marry that with APRS and try to do some beaconing either while I'm hiking or when I get to the summits as part of that activation. I also wanted to be able to find an easy way to record those activities and figure out how I could save them and store them for later. And I just couldn't find a tool out there to do that. And I looked at Zaster. That was actually the very first application that I started to use on a Raspberry Pi and found that was very limited. It did what it needed to do, but it was very limited. And there's a nice Mac app called QTH that I've also played around with, and I still have it. Unfortunately, it's not really those kind of apps, they're not meant to run for any length of time. They tend to crash after so much data has been captured. So I started looking out there as like how I can, and originally I was going to write an app, how I could create something where I could have an archive, I could record my history of anything, any of my activations or any of my travels. And also, maybe help out the community in general as well, because I also around that same time, and this is like three summers ago almost, and I was kind of learning that there was really only one site for APRS mapping. Yeah, there's a couple others out there that kind of work, kind of don't, and that's honestly, it was kind of scary to me to have all of that wrapped up in one site that the person could decide tomorrow, it costs me a lot of money, I don't want to do this, or maybe I'm going to start charging money for it and I'm not going to let anybody use it. So I just kind of was trying to figure out how can I help myself and maybe help other amateurs out there as well and come up with a solution and come up with something that would work and that's not a copy of that other service, but something that's unique. What I found at the time, there wasn't really much out there. There was a software package out there. You've probably heard of it. There's a few sites that are running. It's called APRS Track Direct. It's an old code. It's probably goes back 10, 15 years, I'm guessing. And I actually was able to get that up and running on a small server that I had stood up. And, it kind of did what I wanted to do, kind of didn't do what I wanted to do. It was very hard to set up. And it honestly was full of bugs. I literally decided I was going to take that software and I was going to rewrite it and build something on top of it that I was going to share with the community. And that's originally that's for how the site got started. It was originally called aprs.N2RWE.com. And I launched that in late July of 2022 with basically APRS Track Direct and the APRS IS data feed. And kind of played around with that for a couple of months and decided that I was going to begin a multi-stage approach to basically rebuilding it. I spent the first year just doing some general small improvements on it. I did some bug fixes and decided to share it to GitHub and said, okay, well, maybe other hams will want to, maybe they want to host it as well. So the more sites out there, probably the better off we're all going to be. Again, just to protect ourselves, because that is, ham radio and open source really do go together well. And I wanted to have a solution out there in addition to the one service that anybody can start. So what I found over that year of doing code edits, publishing it online, that nobody used it. Well, actually, towards the end, one person actually started using it. But all the efforts that I was doing and publishing documentation, upgrade instructions, making sure that any changes I made wouldn't break anything, it really wasn't, nobody was really taking it. There's one site out there, it's aprs.to. If you've ever seen it, that's basically my butchered, semi-updated code for that. It does work. It's got a lot of bugs still that I couldn't get out of it, but that's how the first year of the site went. It was about a little over a year and a half ago. I said, okay, I got to take this to the next level. There's too many bugs. It's slow. It's not doing, I'm not fulfilling my mission, because my mission kind of changed as from just having a tool that I could use that I could share with others to, okay, we really need to have a centralized service that we can provide the mapping and tools, but we also have to, and I say we because I don't have any help, but I kind of sometimes refer to myself third party, but we have to come up with a way of of essentially tying an educational component into it, because a lot of new users coming into APRS, I was noticing, probably due to the fact that you got the cheap Anytone radios out there, even the 168 for a couple $100 does APRS, the walk-ons and some others. So kind of really needed to come up with a more easier, I guess, lower the barrier of entry. So when somebody goes to try to troubleshoot something or see if they're on the air, they don't have to feel like they're pulling out a technical manual to understand how to use a website. And it's kind of spoon-fed in very clear terms for them to understand. And I decided about a year and a half ago that I was going to stop sharing the public repo. I was going to rewrite as much of the code as I could in the time that I had, modernize it, streamline it, extract as much performance out of it as I can, because it's very slow. There's a lot of data. First of all, you guys know this, you're doing APRs. There's a lot of data. And currently, as of a couple hours ago, I was checking the IS servers. It was like 112 packets per second. Times minutes, hours, days, it adds up. And I don't stop there. The site also does the weather network, the glider network, and also the European APRS network, CB-APRS, which is, I wish we could do something like that here in America. But anyways, I decided basically to come up with something that would, I guess, integrate all four of those together, serve those four communities. And we have, by the way, we have a huge glider. There's a big hobbyist just across the lake here in the Toronto, Burlington area. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to support the glider network. But anyways, once you start putting all that together, glider data, the weather data, the APRS, the two APRS networks, you're talking hundreds of packets per second flooding into a server. And that suddenly didn't work very well. It happens. One of my hobbies, obviously IT is my profession. I also do it as a hobby to keep my skills sharp. I'm probably the only ham in the world that has a 5-node server cluster in their basement with some pretty high-end hardware. So I decided to not only rewrite the APRS site, but also to split it over these 5 servers, make it a true cloud-based service where we have a bunch of different things doing a bunch of different tasks, inbuilt redundancy, speed, etc. So it was about December of 2023, I launched APRS.to. So I dropped the APRS N2RWE, launched APRS2 with a new domain, all new code, the very similar UI that I have now. And I introduced, user accounts and a bunch of new stuff that if you've used the site, you've probably seen it before. If you haven't ever seen the site, then I can give you some of the highlights that make APRS2 unique. For example, in that spirit of new users, helping people out and helping people get started, I put a passcode generator in there. So if you're trying to figure out how to set up your iGate or some other application, or in my case, it was my Mac app or Zaster, how do you get a passcode? You Google it, you get some sites, some work, some don't. So I decided that was one of the first things that I built in. The other thing that I built in, again, anybody here that's ever set up a Digipeater, you use, and I have a couple, and I'm preferential to the microsat devices. If you want a set and forget kind of device, everybody has different coordinate systems. There's like 6 different coordinate systems out there, and you either got to have a calculator and do the math, or you find a website or something along those lines. Well, I decided to solve that problem. So I built in a essentially the coordinate converter, I call it. Anytime there's a set of coordinates, you'll see a globe on the site, or guess what? You can right click anywhere's on the map and there's a get coordinates. It will give you the coordinates in 6 different systems just by doing a right click. And then you can copy and paste those straight into your app so you can set up your Digipeater software or whatever you're trying to configure. Some of the other things that I added back at that time as well is we created snapshots for maps, which is that's the use case that I really wanted out of software. So if I'm doing a soda event, which I have yet to do, but I'm going to do it this summer, or any other event, or in your case, and I'll show you. As a matter of fact, I got a map that I built for you guys earlier. Whatever you can build on the map, you can save it, you can recall it later, you can share it with other hams. They can open it up and view that same map that you've built. And that was a big one for me is to be able to do that, to basically create a record of my activities, I guess. Other things that I've added since the relaunch, we have all different amateur radio call sign databases. We have the FCC databases integrated, the Canadian amateur radio databases integrated, radio ID, and QRZ as well. So we pulled data from all those sources. When you're viewing the information on a particular station, you can tell if they're Canadian amateur, what their class is, or their, I guess, endorsements are. For US, what their class is. If they're in DMR, you'll get the radio IDs from the DMR. Haven't launched this piece of yet, if they have a QRZ profile, right now we just blindly link to that, but we're going to be pulling in profile pictures and things like that in not too far distant future. Also integrations, indirect integrations with HamCall, HamQTH, and some of the other ones. Other thing I wanted to do on that is I want to support some of the great APRS events and activities going out there. And I think you all know APRS Thursday. I mean, that's probably the single most popular weekly event that there is. And I wanted to come up with a couple of ways of helping them out. So I created a check-in page. So if you want to know if you didn't get your acknowledgments back from ANServer, you can go in and check and see if you've checked in. We also have records. So I store all that. We created leaderboards. You can look at event histories graph, APRS Thursday since its inception. And honestly, I also built a user profile. So if you have an account, you can go in and actually view your more granular APRS Thursday activity by SSID, for example. And then we also soda. Because I was going to do soda, haven't yet. So Tara, shame on me for that. There's soda integration for some of the three biggest soda sites out there. So you can, if there's an activation marker, the site has logic. It identifies it as a soda activator, and then it presents the web links, and then you can actually go view the details of that activation on another site. So other things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to basically make it a powerful tool set, so you can default the map. So you can go in and change the location, the zoom, the marker sizes, the font sizes, colors, and you can save all that. So when you come back, especially if you have eyesight problems, you can make the text larger or the track lines larger. We also allow, station favorites and that kind of stuff I wanted to build in as well. And again, it's really, really about trying to basically make it more usable. And the latest thing I added right around the holidays was a universal packet decoder. So if you're trying to figure out how to set up a radio, or if you're getting packets out and they're getting marked as bad, you can copy any packet in there, paste it in, it'll try to decode it or try to tell you what's wrong. If it doesn't decode, or if it's really bad, it'll just throw an error up. But it was just kind of, again, a way to take a packet from any site or any software and have it decoded and be able to see what it was or what it should be. So I know I'm kind of really just blabbering on a little bit here, but I do want to, and if you guys don't mind, I want to just share my screen for a minute to show you a couple of these.
Absolutely. I think we're all waiting.
Okay. I told you I was going to try not to run on too much, but
No. The background is fantastic. Fantastic.
So let me get into the share here and then there we go. So y'all probably see some kind of a map right there, right? I hope.
Yep.
So let me just make that bigger for my own. Oops, wrong button.
Saw DeWitt there.
Well, unfortunately, the make it bigger button is disabled because I am sharing my screen. So I'll leave it little as long as you guys can all see it. Then, so let me get back. Actually, there, back to the main site here. So, first of all, if anybody has a question, please stop me because I'll just keep blabbering on because that's typically what I do. But one of the first things that I was just talking about is the ability to pull coordinates up from any location. So I can move the mouse, find where I want to go, right click, and there's the top 6 coordinate systems that you probably ever need, including NMEA, but I don't think anybody really ever uses that here to program anything. But anywhere's on the map, I can move around, I can get coordinates here. And that, I mean, for me, that was the first useful thing that I created, because the microsat devices, for example, use a different coordinate system than Zaster. And then you can also get that from any station. So if I go into a station details, I mentioned the globe here. If I click on the globe, I can convert the coordinates for that last known position and then copy that into any of my software. Again, on the station information, some of the things I was talking about here. So for example, there's our integration with the different services, call sign, DMR information, all that over on the right. We can favorite stations so they come up. And I'm going to be doing some interesting thing with favorited stations here in the coming weeks or months as well. And also a track me, which track me is a new thing that I added as well. It's a link that always follows you. So if you go to that particular, anybody opens that particular link, it will center the map, zoom in on you, and find you, which is very useful if you're doing an activation or a hike or something. You don't have to try to guess where your map coordinates are going to be. You just give them a link and it takes you right to that station on the map. But, back to the education component a little bit, and I keep tweaking my algorithms here, but you see like path quality, for example, obviously this is my local iGate here at the house. So I'm going to have the best pathing out there because I'm direct, but similar to some of the other sites, I try to do the path analysis to see people can understand that, okay, maybe I'm just in a bad location and it takes me 3 hops to get somewhere, or maybe my radio is misconfigured. So try to come up with some kind of intelligence to help new users, especially, understand what is really happening. And as other things as well, same data you get on any of the other sites here. So if you've seen it before, we also look at health issues. That's a new thing I also added this past fall as well. So that looks at other things. It looks not just at pathing, but it also looks to see, well, if you had any invalid packets or any large gaps where, if your average transmit interval is X number of minutes, are there big outages? And is this a station that transmits frequently? So then we're going to warn you about that. So in this case, I have no issues with my particular site here, but all the statistics, you guys have seen this. I'm not going to, spend a lot of time. You can filter it here. Obviously, I'm only on one network here, so that's kind of unimportant. So I don't actually transmit, but I do actually receive locally. So these will show all the stations that I've heard in the last 15 days. And the other thing that we can do here is I can select all of these, and then I can add them to a filter on the map, close my window, and these are all the stations, that I have heard, that my local iGate has heard here in the last 15 days. So it's a very quick and dirty way of mapping what my station is doing. So I can get back into this for a second. I don't actually have a weather station here. It's still new in a box. Eventually I'm going to get there, but I'll show you a couple of unique things for weather stations in a minute. Raw packets, if you're ever doing any kind of diagnostic work, this is essentially your raw feed for the last 30 days. In this case, new as the last couple of weeks, we've added these little buttons over here that will actually take you to that packet decoder. So if you want to see what any particular packet is or does or what it contains, this will give you a quick and dirty way of decoding that packet and being able to see it. So a few other things. I don't know if you've ever noticed, we do a statistical analysis of coverage. There's no real good way to model a coverage map. So what essentially this site actually does is it looks at the received data over the past 15 days, models it and heat maps it. So you can kind of see, okay, these are the stations I've had over the air communication with in the past 15 or so days. And then we can actually, so this is my station. I can do the same thing for the local digipeater down south. And then I can see what my station is with the other digis, and I can keep adding more and more stations if I want to calculate or try to understand the coverage. Now, we don't take into account, I don't even know how to implement the algorithms to take into account terrain. So this is just basic statistics based on what was received and when over the past couple of weeks. A couple other interesting things I just want to point out here too. In this, I don't send messages, but if you were doing any kind of messages or sending beacons or bulletins, you could view all of that stuff here as well. The other thing that's probably unique here as well is you can position the map however you want it, and then we can actually watch a live feed of any new packets coming in over that geographical boundary. So it's very similar to setting a filter on your app. And exactly what the back end of the site is doing is setting a filter, mapping those packets and those stations, and then I'm just watching that diagnostic log. So again, if I'm trying to troubleshoot something, that might be one place I can look, or I can go into my actual station and do the same thing. So I can go into the live packet feed. If I'm transmitting, this station doesn't transmit over the air, so I'm not going to see anything. But if I was, and I should have had an HT here to demonstrate, you would see that come in real time as well. For anybody that wants, you come into the site, and you're going to see, gee, that map is really busy. By the way, you see how fast this is. If anybody here watches my Facebook feed, I've been posting for the last 8 weeks or so on all the back end speed improvements I'm doing. So the last piece of the rewrite of the software was in the application servers in the back end. So a lot has gone into optimizing that. And just last night, we achieved I wouldn't say a new record low, but it was a record low of 2.1 seconds to render the entire map from scratch. So, but anyways, back on this a little bit here. So one of the other unique things about the site, and this is great for new users, is we have a map wizard. So if you don't know and you see all this stuff, you come here for the first time and there's all these markers and all this clutter, and I don't know what I really want to do. So you can go into the map wizard, and we have 5 common, I don't say most frequently, but often used presets. So if I just want to see APRS stations, let's turn off the weather. Let's get rid of all the garbage. So I can just do that. And now I've hidden all the non-APRS stuff. So this is strictly anything over the IS network. So we obviously have some local weather stations, and other stations. We declutter the map significantly here by taking all that out. And I do have a local weather station. So I just want to show you a couple things on weather. So first of all, this is my personalized view. I love the 1980s retro look. But if anybody that wants to have a weather station, we have a great gauge view or tables. The site actually does the scraping and creates an almanac. So every day it goes back and looks at the last 7 days of weather history for any of the weather stations that report in, gives you today's weather, yesterday's weather, and the last 7 days, marking highs, lows, wet days, dry points, and humidity, etc. So if you're into weather, you have an APRS weather station. Which I do. I have a site that's offline right now because it's solar and buried under snow. But this was, again, a way for me to record and use that data. And we also can graph it just like other sites do. So temperature, dew point, all that stuff. We keep all those graphs. And you can also download it. We can put it into a table, and then you can actually come in here and, oops, sorry, you got to select it all first. Then we can actually come in, I can save it, download it, bring it into another app, whatever you might want to use. But anyways, back to... I promised you guys that I made a map for you, so let me reset. So one of the unique features I think truly unique features of the site is you can snapshot a map. You can snapshot a map as either just a live overlay, so all my presets, but use live data, or you can go back in time and I can archive something. So for example, your 2024 event, I went this afternoon and I created a snapshot for that. So I'm going to map out all of your sites from that day. Now, it takes a little while to pull the data from archive, but there you go. And I simply did that by searching the call letters associated with the event and bringing them up on the map, and I saved it. It literally took me 2 minutes to build this map, and I can share it with a link. And if you ever were doing a live event, we can make it over a live map, for example. So that's just one example of what a snapshot is. I can take any map view and make it a snapshot. So I'll clear that out. Just another example of, of ways that this can work. So for example, weather stations. I want to look at only APRS weather stations. So this is essentially a set of filtering that I created, but it's only on a live map. So I can apply that. And I'm going to just see only the over-the-air weather stations. And we actually have a few here. Oops. My mouse is a little sensitive, but we actually have a few here that are strictly APRS over-the-air weather stations. Not many, but there are a few. And then as far as activations go, if you're other events, I did another one just as this is actually more of a test. So was it 2023? Where is it? Yeah, 2023. I was on vacation in Maine, and we took a trip up the Maine coast, and I was beaconing the entire time. And I actually went back retroactively and created a map for that trip. And there's that trip. So this is almost 3 years ago. And then you can run your cursor along any of these markers, and you can actually see the path of that particular packet took to get onto the network. So that's what snapshots are. And I can build a snapshot very easily. So let me get back here. I can just, I'm just going to make a quick one here. I'm going to go down. Let's go down to the New York City area. If I want to make a snapshot, it's really this. Well, actually, before I do that, let me just talk about one other thing because I'll tie it all together. So there's obviously, a lot of data here. So I can come in and filter different things. So I can, if I want to just get rid of the weather stations, I can turn off the weather stations like that, or I can bring them back on. I can do other things. So for example, hide the weather stations, and then I'm going to come through and, there's other objects and items as part of the APRS spec. So you have stations, which encompass any general packet. And then we got the objects and the markers, which have durations and kill packets and things like that. So we can actually take those off. Now I'm looking at just stations. And I can mask a few other things. I can get rid of the internet stuff. So these are just all stations that are, over the air. So you can see we got a vehicle down here traveling. You can see some animations when new packets come in. So by the way, these maps are live. So you'll see an animation whenever a new packet comes in. And then if that's not enough, I've added this fall as well. Let me reset my map here. We've added some filtering, and the filtering takes that one step further. You can do symbols. So if you want to just filter by a particular symbol, you can come in here and select, let's just show stations that have houses, for example. And there's just stations with houses. So again, if you're trying to map like a soda activation, you can do a filter based on the soda symbol. And then we can actually come in and we can add to that. So if I want to say we want houses, let's, I don't know, we'll pick something at random here, I guess. Let's do anything that's a digipeater. So houses and digipeater is kind of an odd combination. So there we go. Nothing changed on this particular view, but you can see up there in New England, we picked up a couple other stations. We can take that a step further. So on the filtering, if you're interested, for example, you're doing an event where everybody's moving. So let me reset the map again. And I know we had we had a moving vehicle down south, so we'll pick up that. So if we wanted to do a filter based on who's moving, and we're going to say people moving, any station moving faster than 40 miles an hour, let's see if there's any out there. And we do. We have a car out there that was last reported to be moving 51 miles an hour. So you can tie all of this together. So, map snapshot is basically a conglomeration of filtering and data sources and map positions and zooms for easy recall. So I can create, we can create a snapshot here. I'm going to go back. We're going to filter. I don't know. I'm going to do you can also filter by call signs as well. So if you want to start typing a call sign, I can build filters based on any of my stations. I'm not going to do that because I don't have anything operating outside of my Digi right now, but we'll just look at digipeaters only. So here's all the digipeaters in that particular area, and I want to save that. So now I'm going to create a snapshot so I can recall that later. We're going to call it digipeaters. I can even find, if I want to take the time to scroll through, I can even find the digipeater icon. I'll just do the blank one right there. So now we have the ability to do time travel. So that basically is going to associate this snapshot with all these presets that I put together, either with a point in time, which is now, or I can not select it and it'll be a live map. But in this case, we're gonna time lock it to right now. And when I hit this create button, so we create the snapshot, and I didn't get the save, but that's interesting. I didn't get the telemetry back saying it's saved, but there it is. So for whatever reason, it didn't status back to tell me it's saved, but there it is. So we're going to reset the map, and I'm going to go back home, and then I'll go back to that snapshot, and I'm going to apply it. And you'll see that the map is going to take me right back to where we were and set those filter parameters, and there's all the same symbols. So that's exactly what a snapshot is. It's just a way to take a point in time view of the map, whether it's for an activation event or just your own personal desires, trips, hikes, anything, and recall it later. And then, of course, there's a couple other things. Unfortunately, here it's very dark, but we do grid squares. So if you ever wanted to know what your grid square is, we can go into the map here and we'll pull up the grid square. So now I have the overlays of the grid squares, and this is interactive. So the more I zoom in, it redraws it and it increases the resolution. So I can actually find my house right down to a 10 place or 10 digit precision, which interestingly, my house occupies 4 grid squares if you zoom in far enough. So again, just another example of some uniqueness here. And then the other one, which is interesting for some, especially if you have a ham clock. So I'm going to go out to the globe view here, And unfortunately, I think it's probably almost dark everywhere in the country, but we can actually do the day-night grid. Oh, there we go. So it's not quite on the West Coast yet, but that actually, we can zoom in, if you're working a station, you want to zoom in, so we can bring that up and we can actually have that thing refresh almost in real time. So you can actually watch the darkness creep, which is, I don't know, but it's how useful that is, just one of those neat things that we have here. And then lastly, really the last major thing is we also support Google Maps. So if you prefer Google, I like Leaflet. It's a little more responsive, believe it or not, a little more optimized. But if you want Google Maps, we do support Google. You can do the satellite on Google. So if you the Google Earth satellite maps, so you can actually overlay. That's limited to registered users because Google puts limits on how many free calls that we can have, that a site can have before I have to start paying for it. So I restrict that to anybody with an account. So if you're not logged in, you are unfortunately stuck with just the leaflet maps, which is essentially what we're seeing here. I guess really in a nutshell, that's it. I mentioned a couple of things here, like we have the packet decoder, which I already showed you. We have the passcode generator, so you put your call sign in, get your passcode. So again, trying to make things, for new people. And then I also mentioned APRS Thursday. So hopefully anybody in this meeting here has done APRS Thursday. So this would be last week's event. So if you do participate,
Yep,
we
I
still,
did. There's a few on here that do it. Yeah.
that's great. I think that's great. So you can come in here, you can put your call sign in. I didn't actually the last particular, I was unfortunately had a work meeting, but there's how we support it. You can see your ACK if you're APRS PH, if you check in through that bot. We don't have and by the way, I host that on our servers here for the community. So APRS PH, the website and bot are actually hosted on the APRS2 servers. And then we also have the leaderboard. So if you want to know what your lifetime check-ins and statistics, all that kind of fun stuff. And we can actually graph, as I mentioned, we can graph the history of the APRS Thursday Net over time. So it looks like participation has kind of trended upwards in the last 6 months or so, which is good. And then, again, you can also see that you're in your own account, so your own participation. And yes, I'm pretty bad, so don't look at me right now, at least on this particular SSID. But I have checked in a few times, as recently as January 30th. And that's, honestly, I can talk on little things, little details, but I don't think anybody here really cares about that. The only other thing is, I did mention you can set map preferences. So anytime you log in, you can change marker sizes. You can make the markers bigger, change the text colors, things like that, just to make it easy on. All that stuff is customizable for any of the registered guests that want to do an account. So I guess, that's where we are today. And I do have some ideas for the future, but I just, want to stop and take questions, I guess. Or not.
No.
And that's absolutely fine because I'm kind of talking to the experts, so I don't expect a lot in the way of questions.
No, I just like to comment. I mean, we're a lot of us know Hesu, who owns and operates, develops APRS.fi. I mean, there's nothing wrong with mentioning it, right? This isn't like commercial software. Competition, I think, is healthy. It's what keeps things. You find something that you like, or you find something that you use, but you want something that if you feel like you can do something that addresses your use cases, so be it, right? I mean, I think it's pretty evident here that you've done enough to make this your own, and I think it's incredibly impressive, and I want to commend you on the work that you've put in. I think this is gorgeous. I love the features that I've seen so far. Really, really amazing contribution to the amateur radio community. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I, you're absolutely right. Hesu's done a great job with APRS.fi, and I don't promote it. I don't even try to promote it in the Facebook groups or any of the other groups, just because he's done it for years. And, we all owe him a lot of gratitude as well for his contributions. And
Absolutely.
Competition is healthy, but I don't like to throw it in my face or anybody's face. And that's probably why this site's been around almost 3 years and many people still don't know about it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with promoting it. Yeah, personally.
Am I seeing this correctly? The refresh rate on this site is a little bit quicker than FI?
So I just today, so I've been working on the back end servers. So we essentially, the back end here essentially checks for new packets. So as a connected client, it's checking for new data 10 times per second. So theoretically, any client that's connected can get up to 10 packets per second, which if you consider the IS volume worldwide is 100 to 120 at any given moment, you can get up to 10% of the feed. So what that basically means is as soon as it hits one of the, and I have 3 APRS instances running for this, and actually that might be a good, I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute, just to.
And it's nice to see I'm not sure what you call them, but it's almost like a little wave that comes out from the object when it gets updated.
Yeah, that's the transmit animation. That way you know when something's happened. And actually that goes one step further, and I probably should have mentioned it. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. This big, goofy, messy drawing, this is actually what it takes to run the site. So these are, and I'm not going to zoom in and go into any detail, but essentially each one of those square blocks is a virtual machine living on the cluster. So we have 2 APRS instances for every single data source coming in. So we got the APRS, the weather, OGN, and citizens APRS. So there's 8 APRS servers, and those all have connections, 2 connections going to their different respective data sources. And in my case, for APRS, I have a tier 1 and a tier 2 connection for redundancy. They go through an aggregate. So APRC can be set to deduplicate and aggregate connections. So that goes through one of those, goes into a data logger. I have 3 independent databases that are synchronized with each other for redundancy and load balancing. And then there's a whole bunch of other backend stuff. And we have 3 application and 3 web servers that actually serve all these pages. So when you're connecting on the map here, so when you look at the map, and let me just switch back to that now. When you're on the map, of course, my fingers don't go as fast as my mouth does, but so when you connect on the map, the application server actually creates a tunnel to my APRS instance. So we're bypassing the database. We're bypassing everything. We're taking a tap off of APRS, which is coming right off of IS, and we're basically wrapping that packet up in JSON, so JSON notification. So we're parsing it and then wrapping it and sending it to the web browser over a web socket. So we're not polling. So the data is actually being pushed in real time straight to the browser. So if you want to do a test, take your HT or take your radio, bring up the map to your station, and you can actually watch the beacon. Like I said, you saw the animation. I can zoom out a little bit. We'll see you. The bigger the map is, the more likely we're going to see something. I don't have anything moving in my vicinity right now, but you'll see the animation. That basically means a new packet has come off of the IS network. We've parsed it and sent it on to your browser. So if you want to do a speed comparison, and I'm not, I'm not trying to brag or take shots of it. If you put my site against aprs.fi, you're probably going to have an update that's about a second faster. Just because of that, we're not doing polling. I'm literally just tunneling the data straight to the browser. And that's important because that takes load off the servers as well. But obviously, when you first load the page and all these map loads and everything, that is pulling off the database because we have to find a way to go back, get all that historical data to render the map, and then after which it shifts to the live view. And then I didn't talk about searching at all, but this is another unique feature on the site, that if you're trying to find a particular call letter, and by the way, you notice there's a star there, that means I've marked it as a favorite station. But if you want to type in, and I can look for anything. So for example, I'll just pick my weather station, which is kind of down right now. So you see the list updates in real time as I'm trying to search for a call sign. So I can bring up my unfortunately dead solar powered weather station right now. It'll tell me the last time it was heard from is the 10th of December. But it's important to note, if you're actually watching a station, so if I wanted to look at any one of my local APRS stations here, actually I'll pick up my local Digi, and I leave it on this particular page here, this data here also updates in real time. So if a new packet comes in, and while you've got this screen up, so if you wanted to leave the screen up on a monitor for troubleshooting or as part of a multi-viewer in your ham shack, this page will update as new packets come in.
What did you write this in?
So there are three languages for this whole thing. So the front end is PHP HTML, which is, in Java or JavaScript. So that's basic for any web app. The back end is the bane of my existence. It's written in Python.
Okay.
And
Where's that all
Python's
about?
not a performant language. Anybody that's done Python knows it's great for small utilities, not so good necessarily for high performance applications. And in my recent focus, so when I started this, when it was back when it was track direct before I started rewriting it, it was written in Python 2 and it would not run on Python 3. So
Hmm.
my first act was to go through, port everything over to Python 3, and now it's Python 3.1.3. And then as I restructured and refactored the code, I've condensed functions. And if you are a Python app, there's some value in things like slots, using slots, using the fast cache or one of the other caching algorithms. So a lot of refactoring has gone into that code. And then the last one was database optimizations. It took, and I knew this for a long time, and it's just one of those lazy things that you got enough compute power so you don't have to optimize the code. But when you get a large map, and you saw like the large, we got a lot of markers here. When you get a large map covering a metro area like New York City, to draw this map, you might have to pull 2,000 packets or more out of the database just to draw this map. Matter of fact, I can just refresh it. We'll see down here in the bottom right. So that map was 2,023 packets. So each one of those has to come out of the database. We have to look up the station information that's behind it. We have to look at the packet path information that's behind it. To render a map like this, we were hitting the app originally was hitting the database 2,000 to 3,000 times just to do one map load, which is why initially when I first started rewriting the software, to load a map was 6 to 8 seconds.
That's incredible though for Python. And what's the database then?
So the database is Postgres. And
Okay.
if you ever use Postgres, that's another thing. Last summer, I restructured the entire database without losing any of the packet information. So one of the tools that I employed for that is declarative partitioning. So if anyone that's ever done Postgres with a large data set, declarative partitioning is essentially a bunch of independent tables. So I break up the APRS data and I store it by day, and I store it by type. So weather, telemetry, packet, path, 4 tables for an OGN as well. So five tables for every day of the year, every year that we have information stored. And then we break up station information by networks, APRS, CWAP, OGN, etc. So when we're doing queries, now we can subquery. We can break it out by specific dates. So if we know a date range we're trying to query, we can optimize it based on date ranges. So there's a whole bunch of different, essentially a whole different model now. Because in the past, the software was originally written strictly on an MVC model. So in other words, you had classes for everything. I still have a lot of the classes, but each of the class, you load a packet class. So every packet that got pulled out of the database got put into a packet class. Then there was a command in there to find the station information. So now that's running a query on one station. But we just saw we got 2,000 packets here that we just processed, which means now I'm looking up station information 2,000 times, and that just took forever. And it slammed the database. I mean, it was slowing everything down. So it's still ugly. I think the last profiling I did a couple of days ago, we're still almost 500 queries yet. So I got a long ways to go to streamline it. But it's also a balance, if you've done programming, it just sounds like maybe you have. Also a balance between, resources, memory, processors. Do I want to hammer the server really hard and use a lot of memory to preload a lot of stuff, or do I want to accept a higher number of queries? Slower performance, but I'm not hammering the servers quite.
Have you ever thought about converting any of it to Go or?
I've actually thought about converting it to C. I don't know Go. Actually, I've never programmed in Go. I've been
Incredible.
programming in C since the 80s, though. But
we should talk after this. I have some thoughts to share with you.
Oh, sure, absolutely. The other thing, the parsing library is APRS Python. I had to fork it as well because I don't know if anyone's used APRS Python for anything. It's kind of outdated. The maintainer lazily updates it. It doesn't support objects very well. It doesn't support items at all. Weather parsing was hit or miss. There's a lot of problems. So I ended up having to fork it and also do a bunch of fixes on that. But just, you've seen how fast this goes. I don't know if any of you ever go to the server status here. This is again real time. So this is the status, all the different processes, all the different servers. And I mentioned the partitioning. So we have a tab here for data availability. So when I have to do any kind of database maintenance, I can take a particular day and data type offline. And it just disappears from queries. It disappears from use. I can compact it. I can do whatever I need to do on the table and then bring it back online. And then, as far as how much data there is, the statistic page kind of tells it all. 7.1 billion packets, almost 7.15 stored.
How far back does it go?
So APRS data goes back to August 16th of 2022. And the other networks, OGN we're time bound to 24 hours. The weather, CWAP goes back to, I think, September of that same of 22, and APRS around that time as well.
What virtual environment are you using?
That's a great question. So I have a 5-node Proxmox server. This
Nice.
cluster. So I got 5 nodes. Each of the nodes is running Intel 8410 industry data center SSDs, or 5410, excuse me, which are the high endurance, high speed SSDs. And I'm actually using distributed storage. So the database, I break all the rules. The prime database, the writing database actually lives on a replicated storage environment, which is usually not a good idea, just because it trashes the IOPS. But because there's not a lot of load on the cluster, I can get away with that. And then the other 2 replicant databases just have NVMe storage.
Have you thought about adding any?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please. I overstepped you there.
Not to duplicate Phi, but have you ever thought about adding additional data sources like AIS or ADSB?
So I have. Actually, I was researching AIS a couple of weeks ago, and it seems like the one requirement is you have to stand up a radio and provide your own feed before they let you tap into the global feed. Now, maybe I read that wrong. I'm landlocked. We don't have any. I can't get. I actually put my SDR on the, what is it, 160.14, I think it is, or one of the AIS frequencies, and left it on for an afternoon. I couldn't hear anything.
I have an AIS station that I could feed to you if you want to do beta testing. I sit
Sure.
one of them is on the Chesapeake Bay, so there's a lot of activity by Norfolk.
Okay. No, I definitely, I've talked to, well, I should say, I had an initial conversation with the Hab Hub folks on the balloon tracking, because I know there's a big controversy around that a couple of years ago, flooding the APRS network. And I thought, well, it'd be nice to bring it back on a separate network so it doesn't impact, but it's still there. That never went anywhere either. I think they kind of didn't want to compete, which is really not competing. I just wanted to place the markers, and I would link back, just like I do with the SOTA activators. But unfortunately, that didn't get off the ground, which is a shame.
We should get you connected with the guy that runs FireNet, if you've ever thought about pulling a feed from there.
I mentioned that to Ron when we talked the other day. I had put a note, a post to Lynn in the FireNet group about a year ago when there was some concern about the FireNet servers were dwindling, and I offered to stand one up on the cluster, and nobody responded to me.
You
The offer's still out
you
there.
might be in the right place.
Yeah, you may be with the right crowd here. So the guy who is the lead on FireNet is, well, I don't know how active he is with Golden Packet anymore, but he participated a couple of years ago.
Well, certainly have. I mean, the offer stands. I got more compute power than I need, than I know what to do with, so I'm happy to help in that regard. There's one other thing. I forgot to mention this. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back for a second. I also have geolocation. I don't know if anyone's ever done that. You mentioned, you guys have a site on Mount Washington, so you can actually, oops, no. Don't ask me to type. So that's easy way to find things. Remember I mentioned that coordinate converter? So if you do find a place, you can bring it up, or we can just go ahead and pull that up on a map. So that's just, I forgot to mention that earlier, so I apologize for going back off topic again.
You ever play around with what 3 words?
I have, a fellow.
I'm a huge fan of it. Yeah.
A fellow, I'm trying to think of his name and call sign, about a year and a half ago. I can't think of his name. He was doing, asked me to help him out with some mapping. He was doing a net logger app on the web and suggested what 3 words to me as well. And I started looking into it and I said, okay, this is great. I need to finish this rewrite before I can start bolting anything else into it. But
Yeah, they've got like a super simple API.
yeah,
Piece
he
of cake,
mentioned that.
sir.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
using that to locate folks in his API for
I
his
don't know why, I don't know why it hasn't taken off more than it has. John Tarbox and I were at Orlando Hamcation, and there were some folks that were there that were published some information about where they were at the event, and they added what 3 words. I always put it in on our roster every year. Nobody's ever commented about it though.
No,
But for anybody who doesn't know what 3 words are, I mean, I think it's like w3w.com, or I don't remember what their URL is, but effectively, you take any 3 words, and I think I forget what the size of the grid square is. It's pretty small, but yeah, you can use that as an alternative to DMS or DDM.
yeah, and it's easy to remember, obviously, because
Very easy to remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I got to look into that. It would be a great add-on to be able to offer, have something like that as well as another line item.
Yeah, it would be sweet.
Hey, Jeff, he should audition for Shack Potato.
Hey, what did I
think
tell you,
I
Steve?
think Ron, you're stealing Ron's thunder here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. Based on my about 10, 15-minute conversations I had with Steve on Monday, um, we talked about it, and I didn't ask him to commit to anything. I kind of told him a little bit about it. Obviously he's got a lot of the background, but I don't want to. I know Steve vacations during that time of the year and does stuff. So, and so anyway, but yeah. So
That's funny. I was telling Ron last year. So when last year's Golden Packet event was happening, we were up in Quechee, Vermont, which is, less than maybe 10 miles from the AT. And I was trying to listen and find some activity. And unfortunately, the only thing so many of the local hams in Vermont were doing the Endurance 100, which I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that. I'd never heard of it until that year. It's basically a 100-kilometer, 48-hour marathon for runners and horseback riders. So you'd imagine the amount of community service that was going into that. So I ended up just listening to that for 2 days. But it looks like we might be up in the same vicinity again this year on the 19th. So anything's possible.
yeah, I think, well, Jeff said you guys are going to talk about Jeff wants to talk to you about Go or something like that. So Jeff can kind of fill you in on,
Yeah, absolutely.
what Shack Potato is and what it does and how it's like very, very well, I'll let Jeff hit you up with it, but bottom line, it's a pretty good position, and you get to take part in the Appalachian Trail from a air conditioning environment of your choice.
That's the best selling point. You don't have to get in the car, go anywhere. You get to sit in AC.
Well, the whole reason why supposedly got back in APRS is so I could do SOTA. I bought a 705 and I have a couple different antennas that I bring. So far, the only thing I've done is set it up on my campsite and play around. I haven't done a single summit yet, but maybe I will this year.
Yeah.
But and same thing I also told Ron, is I look at the site, most of the ideas that have gone on the site are from my own head. A few have come in from suggestions from emails, especially with the APRS Thursday suggestions and some other things like that. So again, if there's anything that any of you think that, oh, it would be great if we could do X, Y, Z. And I can tell you two things I'm working on right now, and I don't have anything to show yet. Well, I have kind of a half-assed UI of one of them, but one thing I'm really putting a lot of effort in is coming up with a real API. Because I really think there's a lot of value in the historical data, not necessarily from, okay, I was here on such and such a day. That's one thing, but if you want, especially if you got an over-the-air weather station, you want trends and be able to pull that information out and do stuff with it. Or if you want to, do analytics on your own station. So a real API. We have a kind of a small one right now for individual stations. It doesn't do a lot. So And that also may open the door to anybody that's doing like APRS Droid or other apps that you want to pull information in to render a map in the past or anything. So that's one big one that's coming probably a little bit later this year. And the other one that I'm doing in response to some conversations I had on a local repeater here, as well as a couple emails in the last couple of months as well, is how do I get my repeater icon on the map? And we know there's objects out there with analog repeater that for analog repeaters that have the QSY information formatted with the right frequency offset, tone information. And what I'm finding is a lot of the people that are, at least in this area here in the New York area, a lot of repeater trustees really don't want to do anything with APRS, but they want to know how they can, get their station or their repeater on a map. So the one or two radios out there that can take QSY information can actually see it and act on it. But so that's one thing I'm working on right now is a way to, for registered users, so we got to have some kind of controls on this to come in, register an account, and create a properly formatted beacon just by putting frequency and PL or CTSS information or squelch tone, DCS codes, whatever the key, certainly not going to support every possible combination of such, but at least come up with a way that we can create for the verified. And again, that's a big thing, verified. So I don't want to put spam out there, but somebody wants to come in, go do the ham call verification or the QRZ verification. So we know that you're really who you are. I'll give you access to a GUI that you can just fill out 5 information fields, and then the server will beacon out every hour your analog repeater or digital repeater information. So those are the 2 big things that I'm working on right now. A couple of side projects as I feel, but that's basically where I'm going right now in the next few months, anyways.
Where do you live? Sorry, I thought you mentioned it earlier, but I mean,
Yeah, it's right here in the map. Syracuse.
Oh, Syracuse. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I have. So I have, like I said, I have the Digi at home. I have the one up at my cabin, which is in the middle of nowhere. I didn't actually pull that up on the map. Like it hasn't been. It's literally up there in the middle of nowheres. And that is actually I'm trying to fill a hole up there because we have there's if anybody familiar with the politics here in the Northeast, so you can say there's where I can't right in the middle is where the cabin, there's nothing out there for APRS. So I was trying to build a station that would have some coverage. Unfortunately, I'm still about 100 feet below the highest point in nearby, so I'm still shadowed on 3 sides. But there's some politics going on up in the Adirondacks, which is just to the east of that. There's I think it's a SARNet repeater up there, or some search and rescue group has a repeater up there, and it's like it's very close to 144.39, so they won't allow any digipeaters up in that area, rather than recoordinate the repeater or put filtering in. So unfortunately, we've lost the High Peaks region of the Adirondacks. There's a group up here in Whiteface Mountain, which is kind of on the mid to western edge of the Adirondacks. But if you're in any of this group here or any of this region, you basically have no APRS coverage whatsoever. And even this guy here has a very small footprint, as you can see. And that's really it. There is no APRS in the Adirondacks. See. So that's one of the things I'm trying to have with my solar site. And same with the Catskills. I have a 3rd site that's seasonal that I put down in the Catskills. I mark it with a snowflake in the off season because unfortunately the place where it is, they shut the electricity off in the winter time. So I can't have the site going there either. There's no coverage down in the Catskill Mountains. So that's been one of my side missions is to try to figure out how to get permanent locations in these. And I was talking with Alex, KQ2H, who runs a huge system down in the New York City area. Unfortunately, never got to getting him to agree to let me use one of his sites. So that's kind of where the state of things are here in New York.
Hey, Steve, you were talking about how fast things are. I've got my HT sitting next to me being fed through a receive only iGate, and about just, I could, just about the time the packet's noise is done, it's already flashing on my other screen.
That's great. That means my optimizations are working.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Quick
Well,
question.
yeah.
On the coverage maps, which are very, very cool, are they set to a specific kind of packet, like RF herd only, or just everything that it's
Yeah, it has to have an RF path in order to be measured.
Great.
I wish I could figure out how to get contour information in. It would make it so
But,
much more useful, but
but that could be a hopped RF path, right? So it could be broader through some local digi, correct?
well, that's measuring. I'm sorry, I should clarify. That's measuring last hop.
Okay, cool.
And it also heat maps it based on location as well. Great.
Ron, not to put the kibosh on this, but we got
Yep. Nope.
we got a little
Understand.
bit more.
Yeah.
This
So
is incredible.
yeah, this is fantastic. Great having the conversation with Steve earlier this week, and obviously this was that last week or this? Maybe it was last week, Friday.
Last week, yeah.
Last Friday. It's all a blur with the snowstorm and having to go back into the Pentagon on a regular basis now. And just like I tell people, Steve, I think I already told you, but the guys at the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet, if you're ever going to be around the DC area, and you want to come and take a look inside the Pentagon, just reach out to me a week or two in advance to make sure, one, I'm going to be there, and two, it's not a difficult process, but we have to actually, they have to do a quick background check on you. So, but it's just a matter of me just putting your name in, the system sends you an email, and then you log on to the site, put your information in, which will be your social security number. So don't be, I'm giving you that heads up now. So
sounds good.
But they're the government; they have it already. But anyway, so that's it's offered to guys in the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet. Just reach out to me. I know Jim or somebody we've chatted, and he's been in there many times. He doesn't need to go into DC, so but that's okay. So anyway, so any last questions before? And obviously, I know I saw Glenn here, Glenn Allison from who did our the Packet RF forwarding network. He was on tonight. So thanks for coming back. You guys are more than welcome to join the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet group here on groups.io. If you need information, I think it's at the bottom of anyway, reach out to me if you can't figure out how to join, but it's just ATGP, at groups.io. And you're more than welcome to hang out for the rest of the call. I am going to go back and take the share because got a couple. Let me find out which screen I'm sharing here. This one.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ian, Steve, for the presentation. This is really cool. I had no idea about this. I wish I would have known about it a year ago and possibly 2 years ago when I was doing BalloonSat stuff. One quick question just for BalloonSat. One of the challenges I've always had is how do I track where I'm at and then where the balloon is? And how would I do that on this website?
So, so you're saying essentially you want a marker where you're at and then a marker for the balloon, right?
Yeah.
I'm following you. I've thought about that same thing because when you hit the marker to center the map, it doesn't actually put a pin or any kind of notification or visual indicator that's where you started from. So there is no way to do that here either, and that's a great idea. So
okay, does it center where you're? If you view this with a phone, does it look at your location information and center you or not?
It will. If you give your phone permission to do that, it will.
Okay, well that may be at least. I mean, that's part ways there at least. Usually we have APRS in the car, so we should be able to see that as well. And I just have to. Can you filter on two different call signs to show just two, like the balloon in my car?
Sure can. Yep.
Okay.
In matter of fact, you can do a map snapshot over a live map for just your call signs, or you can build a filter. And I didn't show you in that advanced filter, there's a presets tab. So you can also create a whole bunch of presets.
Okay.
Snapshot.
Okay. That'll work. The other thing,
if you look at the site, and I didn't mention the site is mobile friendly. And that was one of my summer activities to make it mobile friendly. So if you haven't looked at it on your smartphone, it should look a hell of a lot more functional than it did.
Okay. Yeah. I saw you're using Bootstrap. That usually helps with that.
It does. Yeah.
So the other thing is, the decoding thing. I was literally trying to build telemetry packets last year, and I was dying. And I've already just plugged in some of the telemetry packets I did just to figure it out. And your decoder works really well. That's awesome.
So the secret on the decoder is it actually uses the same decoder that I process every single packet that comes in on. So essentially, I'm not trying to do it in JavaScript on the browser side. I wanted it to go through the same level of and same amount of decoding and that we do for all the packets. So it literally sends it back to the server, runs the same algorithm on it.
Okay.
So
Lastly is, you mentioned you have a GitHub. What, do you have anything? I'm guessing you don't have this whole server set up on there, but I'm kind of curious about your other project that you mentioned at the beginning.
So I have the original track direct code that I worked on up until 2023, the summer of 2023, if you want to play around with that. Otherwise, on my GitHub, you're going to find a lot of smart home stuff. That's primarily what I code for, at least what I used to code for. But
okay, cool.
All right.
All
right. Thanks. Yep. And obviously, if anybody has any other questions for Steve, assume Steve, you can see the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can put him in there. I lost it when I went to this full screen, but I'll figure out how to get that back later because it's on. Anyway, so Appalachian Trail updates and info to share. Still looking for team captains for North Central, and I think we have one for someplace, but you can be remote. You're helping to coordinate the teams, to schedule the equipment, and get the northern, the center, or the southern end working.
Ron, I thought we had for north and south. We were just looking for central.
Okay, yeah. I could not remember.
You may want to notate it here just for capturing it. But I think Don Rolfe is for north.
Okay.
And I want to say Glenn volunteered for south. Maybe. I'll have to go back and look at the transcripts for October and November.
That's right, Jeff. Up north, Don's been emailing
Glenn.
us about different things so far. So just so you know, he's actively
so I got in for
corral us.
Yep. All right, and I got Don Rolfe in the north, and I got Glenn in the south. So
yep. So we just need one for central. Monkey in the middle.
Right, and obviously we already. I think I won't say we beat the Shack Potato to death, but position. It's we'll. Bottom line is when you talk to Jeff later, he can fill you in on a lot more of the details. Starting probably next month, where the goal is next month, we're going to start going more into the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet 2025 event. If something comes up that it could be something we need to pass or any kind of weird knowledge here that we can fit in, we will. But the main thing is we got to start focusing because we only have March, April, May, and June. So we only got technically 5 before the event, but usually starting in June and early July, we go into the training sessions to where people can join. So just so start thinking in the next 3 to 4 is going to be kind of focusing on what we're doing. We still have to deal with sites down in the south to know which ones. I think it's still in North Carolina. There's some questions. So we're hopefully whoever was the Appalachian Trail worked with the conservatory, maybe he'll have some information with us in the next session or two. So we still have to make equipment decisions. We know the D7050 is not going to be able. I know Jeff can talk about the RT systems for those who have the D700, D710, maybe just the 710s. And at this point, does anybody have any questions for the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet event coming up? We still have a lot of, when it comes to equipment, appliance and stuff, those decisions are still going to be coming forward. Leadership's going to have to work on that. Jeff, maybe there's a thing where, anyway, I'll leave that for the next discussion. I just wanted to hit that real quick. Flip it over to the Appalachian Trail or the APRS Foundation for any kind of updates that Jeff or anybody from Jeff's obviously, I believe, the president of the foundation, and I think we have at least one or I can't see the whole list, but I think we all have at least one more member on there. So Jeff, if you want to hit anything APRS Foundation related or Appalachian Trail from your perspective, please do.
Thanks, Ron. So, gosh, I'm trying to think of what order to go in. So we'll start with the order it's here. So John Tarbox and I traveled down. So John flew down here from Maine to Atlanta. We drove down to Orlando. We gave a presentation called APRS State of the Union. We were the first session on the first day, or amongst one of the first 3 sessions on the first day. We, I don't know, pat ourselves on the back, but it was looking a little grim in terms of the attendees. And then about 3 minutes before the session started, the room practically filled up. So they had like 78 chairs, and it was way over 50. Um, Everybody stayed for like the entire duration, and Jason KM4ACK, who's on YouTube, he stayed with us for the entire thing. Um, it, it was very well received, and it was really exciting. There was one guy, I think one of the Golden Packet um, uh, aspect of it. I just realized my camera was off. So from a Golden Packet standpoint, I think the exciting part about it was that there was a gentleman who came up afterwards. He had a South African accent, but he lives in Canada and is very interested in being part of the Golden Packet this year. Keep in touch with Gerald LeMay every year. I reach out to him around this time of year just to see if he's going to join us. COVID, I think when COVID started, that was the first year that Canada fell out of the running for a while. I think we have a good chance of bringing it back, at least one site this year, which I find really exciting because I would love to bring those guys back into the fold. Whether this guy operates autonomously or if we can get Gerald to join him and have him go out with somebody who's really seasoned with the event. Um, uh, the So, I have not, you guys probably noticed, I have not set out the sign up sheet yet. I think, just given the weather events, the hurricane that went through, several months ago, there's still some uncertainty as to the accessibility or availability of some of the locations on the south end, I guess from like Virginia on down. So, and plus the fact that we may add Canada back in. What I want to do is, obviously we lost Lynn. Lynn and I pretty much worked together hand in hand to organize, coordinate the event and everything. And we did it kind of like all in the background. And I don't feel right about that approach to begin with. But losing Lynn, I really want anybody and everybody who wants to be involved in planning the event to be a part of it. So Ron and I talked, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday, the day before.
Monday. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yesterday. It seems so
Yes.
long ago.
It does, doesn't it? But in any event, what we're going to do is starting next month, these sessions are no longer going to be called Knowledge Share from March through the event in July. They're going to be Golden Packet planning sessions. And so every first Tuesday of the month for March, April, May, June, those are all going to be planning sessions. And so the goal of the very first one will be to make pare down a list of potential locations and get the sign up sheet up. And then we're going to go hardcore into planning the event. And I'm going to kind of just go out of order, just the way that things are running through my Swiss cheese brain here. Lynn runs was running ANServer. ANServer is actually a hidden component in APRS IS32. I still haven't even found the flag to turn it on, but I worked with Lynn's son Paul and moved ANServer over to a server that's owned by the foundation. So anytime that you're using ANServer now, it's actually hitting a foundation server now. Something that is not on this slide, which I'm really excited to announce, is that the foundation also brought up a tier 1 server this past Thursday. So there are now 9 tier 1 servers, and we are 7th as the name of the server. They're really first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. Those are the names of the servers. So we are 7th. Very excited about that. I think from a membership standpoint, I want to say that the foundation is now up to 183 members, which, if you guys haven't, please consider joining. We just made the announcement at Hamcation, so you guys will be the second ones that we announce this to, is that we are going to have an online event on May 10th called APRS Summit 2025. So it will be the Foundation's first APRS event, where we're going to have speakers from all around the world. And initially, right, the goal is at least to just have a single track. But if we can get enough speakers, which people are basically just saying yes as soon as we ask them, We may have like kind of like a, beginner, intermediate, and advanced track, or at least a beginner and advanced track, whatever we can do. So we're going to select a webinar platform. It's going to basically be, something that you can log in, you can choose the track that you want. The event is going to be free for anybody who's a member, and so it's $20 a year to be a member. If you're not a member, it's $15 to attend the event. So for an additional $5, you get to be a member of the foundation. Whenever we open up like some sort of voting, you'll be able to vote. But you'll also help support APRS, which really would mean a lot to us. The foundation does have a club call sign. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but there will be, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months, we'll have some exciting news around there. But I don't really have anything to report there yet. Website update. So we have the foundation website, but also how.aprs.works is kind of the new home for APRS. We do fully manage www.aprs.org, including the site, and we also have the aprs.org domain as of last week. APRS.org is really going to more or less stay the way it is until we find somebody who's willing to do something with it to like give it an overhaul. But how.aprs.works is really where we've been putting content. We've had the first couple of articles that have been published by third parties, like people who are not members of the foundation. If anybody wants to write an article for how APRS works, you can go to the foundation site /contact us and reach out to us. Happy to set up an account so you can be a contributor. We also requested or sent out a request a couple of weeks ago. We set up an email alias, stories@aprsfoundation.org. If you have any APRS story that you want to share with us, we would love to hear it. We're finding that asking for things like use cases or, what can you do with APRS doesn't work. But you ask somebody to tell a story and wow, the floodgates open and the stories have just been rolling in. Our goal is to take those and ideally release one story a week. I think we're going to start out, one every 2, 3, 4 weeks for now. But, as they start coming in a lot more regularly, we find that, people learn really, really well organically through others sharing their experiences. So, this is something we think is going to really help us fire on all cylinders to get more beginners introduced to APRS, and would love to have some of you folks that have been part of the Golden Packet to share your stories about the event in a way that can be consumed by somebody who doesn't know anything about the Golden Packet. What else? What else? What else? I think I may have actually touched on everything. If I didn't, I will throw it out to the list. John, can you think of anything that foundation related that I didn't talk about?
Well, the one thing we mentioned is that Hamcation, there were a lot of APRS people there, and the Daytona Club had an APRS field day, which is something that Bob Berhinga had written about and talked about. And it's basically a day out for APRS people to get together on an alternate frequency, not the national calling frequency, and test APRS. And a lot of people did that. We worked with the Daytona Club. We, promoted it at our talk. And incidentally, Jeff did a phenomenal job doing that presentation. Everybody just loved it. As he said, we had well over 50 people, and everyone stayed for his entire talk. Nobody left early. And a lot of the people participated in that APRS day out. And we went over there and sat with the hams in the evening and talked to them. So that was an excellent opportunity for what did we say? I forget how many thousand people attended, but there were a lot of people
15,000. Yeah, there were 15,000 people there.
That was the final attendance? Yeah. And so
Yeah.
the Daytona Club did that, and they want to do that in future. And hopefully we get other clubs to do those APRS stay outs to promote APRS.
Yeah, and by the way, for anybody who's going to be going to Dayton, we are very, very close to securing a spot either on Friday or Saturday of Dayton. So, you'll be able to join us for a foundation review well, APRS review. It's not really specific to the foundation, but we'll be presenting there. So APRS will get some press at Dayton this year too.
Hey, Jeff, I'll be there if you need help.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, yeah, thank you. That would be fantastic. Kenwood. So we did get to see the mock-up. It is not even a functional unit yet, but the official model is TMD 750, and then there's either going to be an A, E, or a J after it, depending on whether it's for Americas, Europe, or Japan. Kenwood told us they hope to have a pre-production unit ready for demonstration by the time Dayton rolls around, but they said they're not really holding their breath. And in theory, maybe, I don't know. I think the shipping by the end of this calendar year is probably being a little optimistic. We're probably looking at it shipping around the same time of year that the D75 starts. It was like late January, early February 2026. It is effectively a D710 plus D star. So basically, it's a D75 with same feature set from an APRS standpoint that the D710G has in it. And they're adding Wi-Fi to it. So it has Bluetooth, of course. The D75 has Bluetooth, but they're adding Wi-Fi. And the only thing I can think Wi-Fi is going to do is support things like D star terminal mode. I don't know that it'll do anything for APRS. But it's exciting to have a much more modern radio that we'll actually be able to go in and buy, and know that we'll have manufacturer support for many, many years. But it looks beautiful, and yeah, I'm excited for them to finally be shipping, or soon. We'll be shipping in the next 12 months.
Yeah,
Question?
Did somebody say question?
Yeah, Jim Conrad. Hey, is the foundation getting any royalties off of Kenwood?
Yeah. So right now, so the trademark for APRS still sits with Tapper. Even so, right? I don't think Kenwood pays a whole lot, right? So we have no idea of what the dollar amount is. It may not be much more than a few $100s, right? It could be that minuscule. But yeah, I mean we're optimistic that we'll get the trademark at some point, but right now we've got our heads down. There's so many other things to work on. We figure the trademark will just come to us when the timing is right. RT systems. We did mention that a little bit earlier. So for anybody who has a D700, this won't apply to you. Frankly, not even sure with some of the hardware issues with the D700. I think we're going to have to determine how many people actually have them and whether or not we're going to use them this year. Anybody who's on a 710 or a 710G, just so we work around any of the programming issues, RT Systems is going to be mandatory for participants this year. So you'll need to get a programming cable and a copy of the software. We met RT Systems at the event, and we told them about the foundation. We told them about the Golden Packet, and we said we're probably going to have a number of people who are going to need to buy it. If we buy it, as a group, can we get a discount? And they said absolutely. So I will reach out to them and see what sort of a deal. It's unfortunate that it does. This is one of the few cases where it still requires one of their proprietary USB cables. The good thing is that you can do firmware updates. You can use it for more than just programming. So it's not just a single purpose cable. But what we're going to do this year is we're going to send a configuration file out for every site. And the expectation is that that's the config that you will go out in the field with. And we actually have Jim Conrad to thank for that idea. And I think that it's a minimal investment, and the return on it means that we have extremely high assurance that your radio is configured the way that it's supposed to be, and we can no longer use that as an excuse. I think I'm done. Mic drop.
All right.
If I
There
could,
is go ahead.
This is John. If I could just add one other thing from the show, there was a small vendor there called Halibut Systems that has a single board open source, essentially HT. Think of it like a Biofang on a single board, and you use it with your radio. And both Jeff and I purchased one of their boards, and they have software that does some APRS. We were able to send messages. So once we get them and test them, we'll give you guys some feedback about how they work, but that's an additional vendor that has an APRS radio that may be of interest to some people.
All right. Glenn, if you're still on, Glenn Allison from the Packet RF Forwarding Network. In the chat, Steve has his email address, steve@n2rwe.com. The reason I'm pointing that out is Glenn is with the Packet RF Forwarding Network, and he wanted to hopefully reach out to Steve about possibly getting some of their nodes or things on the map. So, all right. Obviously, we're running towards the end, so we're just going to kind of say, if just think in the future, if you got any stories or anything you want to share of your own, any new, this is where we include APRS technology, what new products are out, any ways to use Packet or RF. Don't forget, I think starting next week is the Packet RF Forwarding Network's monthly Packet Net. There's an article, KM4ACK had his email went out today about Hunt It Down, and he talked about the APRS day out. He had a link. I went to the link and never knew about this, and I'm not quite sure what the national ham IM channel of 147.585 is, but it looks like it's a repeater output or something. So I'm not sure if anybody knows anything, but it's on Bob's site. So I don't know if anybody has anything to add about that, what the ham IM channel is. But he said it in terms of when you were going to set an ad hoc or temp network up, you would get off of the 144.39 and then you would go over to the 147.585. So other than what's on that one page, I've never heard anything up until today when I was reading. And then the last thing is just for as we get into next week, next month and everything, when we're talking about this is to kind of get everybody on the same sheet of music, logistics, equipment, technical, those are kind of what we're kind of looking at as what the definitions would be. So, or how something fits in: logistics, movement, location, etc. Equipment is your equipment, power, antenna, and technical is something's not working, etc. So just keep that in mind when we start talking about things and trying to categorize if it's whether we have a breakdown or we have an issue, kind of break it into logistics, equipment, and technical. And I believe that's the last thing I have, Jeff. So, but anyway,
Fabulous.
yeah. So I'll turn it over to you, Jeff, and you can, if anybody has any last things, I'll turn it over to Jeff, and he can bring us home.
No, Ron, as always, you as our program manager are just doing an absolutely killer job. Can't thank you enough. And I think just based on like the turnout that we had tonight and the fact that most of the folks are still on the call, that's validation for you that you're doing a kick-ass job, and really want to thank you. Steve was just an absolutely incredible speaker, and the topic was just spot on. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Anyway, if anybody I think, Jeff, it's 9 o'clock, which is a little late, but if anybody has any last things, we'll call it. Otherwise, Steve, thank you very much. I sent you guys an email so you guys can touch base, but everybody have a good night. Thanks for coming out. If anybody has any topics, even though we won't get to them in the next 2 or 3 classes, just send them to me. Because what I'm doing is I'm interested in APRS, and I look to find out what's going on in the world. Every week I look for any kind of news. So thank you very much. Have a great night. 73.
Everybody.
KB.
73.